Hello. Do you have a problem setting boundaries and people are constantly aggravating you and you're like, what is going on? Wow. Let's talk about how to set some and make your life a little bit happier. Welcome to Chick Chat and Chill. I'm still laughing from the intro. I am Laura Fickett, your co-host. I own Fickett Financial Education and Business Coaching, and I love to help people make more money and figure out how to play Monopoly for real. I do free consultations, so if you're struggling at all financially or you just want to learn more about finances, please reach out to me. I can help you. Even with just a free consultation, there's never any obligation to sign up for any services. I just want people to be more prosperous. And now let me introduce Antoinette before we talk about boundaries, which clearly she has none.
Actually, I was going to say in my design business, I'm the owner of Pixel This. There has been a couple times where I had to exercise some boundaries and fire some clients. So don't be one of those. And if you're a good client, call me and I'll take care of all your design needs. But I think boundaries is an interesting topic because I think a lot of people, I was thinking about this a little bit this morning and I was like, I think a lot of people think if I set a lot of boundaries or why people don't exercise them, they think they're being mean.
Yes.
And I think people equate boundaries to mean and
or
not
rules. They think boundaries and rules, but they're not the same.
No, they're really not. And I think before we maybe deep dive in that, kind of explain some of the differences, I think. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
because you could still say no and set boundaries and have it be out of a non-loving place. So it's not that being a pushover or doormat is always the best case scenario, and vice versa. You could be a yes person and it also not be in a loving, you know what I mean? Like I could give you some examples. Let's see. So let's say you have you're a parent and you have a child and they're acting up or whatever, or they're bothering you. I want some candy. I'm at the checkout and you know it's not in their best interest, but you just buy it anyway just to shut them up.
yes.
So that's something that you're not exercising a boundary. It's not benefiting anyone, but you're just, again, a boundary in that case would have been a good thing to exercise, So they're saying yes isn't a loving thing to do.
Well, and even in that scenario, though, a rule would be like, we never buy candy in the checkout. That's a rule. That's like a hard and fast. We never buy candy in the checkout. A boundary is, I will not participate in this kind of whiny behavior for you to get what you want. And that goes further than the checkout, right? It goes in throughout the whole store. It goes at home. It goes everywhere. That's a boundary where it applies in the same scenario. You're at the checkout, the kid's acting up, but you say, well, I don't condone this behavior with treats or whatever. And so that's a boundary. A hard and fast rule would be like, I'm not buying candy in the checkout. So that's like kind of the difference. In my head, that's the difference between a boundary and a rule. I think boundaries are broader morals and ethics that you personally have that you won't tolerate in your life. Whereas rules are very you could type it out on a piece of paper. I am not going to do this, whatever. That's how I think of it.
The other thing I think people think with boundaries, they think kind of like you said, it's setting a standard as to how the other person's going to act. And that's not really what a boundary is. The boundary is what you're going to accept.
Right. I'm not going to accept that behavior and give you candy for it.
Well, exactly. But people you can't force, a child to, I'm thinking of the Pink Floyd song, which is how can you have any pudding when you don't eat your meat? So again, you can't.
Okay.
You know that song. Come on. Okay, maybe not.
No, I don't.
But it's a very famous song. But again, you can't force a child to eat. You can't literally go in there and, move their jaws up and down. But you can take away well, I'm not going to serve you dessert then, or, whatever. You can change your behavior around the boundary. And then people will learn how to treat you in response to that.
Right. I mean, the kids are kids and they're going to throw temper tantrums. So, like, you can't prevent sometimes they're tired. Sometimes they just had sugar at a friend's house, like birthday parties. They're like, oh, let's sugar up your kid and send them back. It's crazy town for like hours, or there's a lot of divorced parents. And I remember, like, you'd get your kid back from a weekend of no rules and it's like you have to retrain them for a couple days. Like, so, I mean, their kids are going to be kids. And so, like you said, you can't prevent that. But if you hold firm to your boundary of like, well, you can throw your temper tantrum and but you're not going to get what you want that way. We're going to have a different scenario in order for that to happen. And I think of boundaries a lot in relationships. Mainly, whether it's relationships with clients or relationships with your spouse or relationship with your kids. I know I was not good at setting boundaries when I was younger with my children and everything. It's kind of like, anything goes. I'm the mom. I'll do everything. I'll fix everything. And now as I get older, I'm trying to set some boundaries and they're looking at me like, oh, I think mom's broken. I think something's wrong with mom.
No, but I actually was reading an article and they said like a lot of people, they try, especially, if it's separate households or divorce, they don't want to be the mean parent or the, whatever. So they try to just accept a lot of things and don't have as many boundaries. And they said that's actually not in the best interest of the child. Like children do better in households that have
Structure.
high boundaries and also involvement because you get those other people that just say yes because they don't want to be bothered, so involvement with boundaries. And I'll give you like a perfect example. Like I was a nanny for a while and I got that job. I think I was 11.
And the child's still alive, just so we're clear, before we go any further.
Wait, don't jump ahead. Not so short. No, I'm kidding. What was I going to say? I was like 11 years old. So I weighed, I don't know, maybe like 60 pounds or something. I was like a little peanut and the kids were 2 and 3. So they lived on a lake and they had this little pedal boat. So they're like, oh, we want to go on the lake. So I was like, oh, I could, I wanted to do something that they enjoyed. I'd enjoy that too. But I said, okay, but you're going to have to put on life vests. And they were like, why? Our mom, my mom and dad don't make me do that. And I said, did I ever ask you to call me mommy? And they were like, huh? I go, I'm not pretending to be your mom. I don't have the same rules as your mom. I go, the reason why you need to wear them is because I'm smaller than your mom and dad. And if you fall off the boat, I want to make sure you're okay and I could get to you in time. So if you want to go on the boat, it's life vests or not, your choice. So they put on life vests and they were fine. There was an explanation. And then, whatever, we were doing that every so often. And then like a month or two later, the parents actually took them out on the boat and they started to put on the life vests. And the parents were like, no, you don't need that. You're fine. And then they started crying. They're like, don't you love me? Don't you care if we fall off? So it's, you know what I mean? But it is, they saw that boundary as a way of caring for them,
Right. And they protested in the beginning because they're kids.
Yeah.
That's their behavior. They're going to do it, but then you explained it to them why you do it, and
it was fine.
And off you go.
Yeah.
Like it's how it needs to be. But there are some things I found that, as a mom or a wife or whatever role you're playing, or you're playing 16 different roles, as a lot of us do. Like, you get frustrated because you're like, why are they treating me? Why do they treat me this way? Like, I do everything for them. Why do they treat me like this? And you have to really, like, take some accountability for the fact that you have not set proper boundaries in your life. And that is why they're doing it. Just like these kids, if she had just said, okay, fine, then they would have never worn life jackets. But she didn't, and she set the boundary. And so, then the kids got used to it and it was fine. But if you find that there's people in your life that aren't treating you the way you want to be treated, and you're treating them the way you want to be treated, like you're not being mean to them, you're being great to them, and they're coming around and they're not being, they're not meeting your expectations in the relationship, you might want to look at the boundaries that you've set, like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior in the relationship. Because my youngest son is turning 12. Now, the older kids have already been through 12, And they didn't realize how horrific 12 and 13 was until now. So now they see their little brother 12 turning 13 and they're like, "Oh my goodness, like we were horrible. Like that's a horrible age." And I'm like, "I'm glad you have that self-reflection, but just there's a lot of hormones going through their body and everything like that." Well, he swore. Like, and that's not acceptable in our household for that's, a disrespectful thing for the children to do in our household. The adult children, they come home and, the boundaries are more, they're looser because they don't live there anymore. We don't have as much control over them, but not for the 12-year-old. The 12-year-old and the 13-year-old, when he turns 13 and 14, 15, it's probably going to last till 16, to be honest. But, if we had just let it slide, then we're making that boundary soft. And think of it like, you want to put your dog, let's say you have a vicious dog, you put it in a penned in area so it can run around or whatever. But if the fence starts to get weak, there's the potential that the dog breaks loose and does harm. So think of your boundaries like that. Like if we just let it slide once because we're tired or, like he didn't mean it and it just slipped out. Well, if it so easily slipped out of his mouth in our home, where else is it slipping out of his mouth? At school, on the playground, at birthday parties, like so it really is important that you set those boundaries and you keep them. And sometimes it's exhausting, especially if you're an older parent. I find I have less energy now than I did before, but it's really important to like not get the boundaries so soft because, like I said, if the fence caves in,
Yeah.
then it's all heck breaks loose.
And I think it's really important in like romantic relationships too. I mean, one of the things that I don't know if you even call it, like when I start dating somebody or I'm getting to know somebody new, I wouldn't say like, oh, these are my boundaries or whatever. I just know what I feel is acceptable or
Yeah,
not.
when it comes up.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to print out a list.
No, but it's like, it's one of those that like, for example, like the first time that there's a disagreement or they get mad or something, to me, that's very telling how they act. So like one of my things is you're not going to treat me worse than you would a stranger on the street, but and I'll see like I've kind of lucked out with guys and what they dated. If we split, it was usually other issues, but I see my friends going through these things where they're always with cheaters or they're always with this and to me that's just really sloppy boundaries. So you can't, if you're part of a relationship, you cannot act the same as a single person.
No.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
but there's a lot of people that don't understand that. Like they literally don't understand like, well, like if you have a boyfriend and they're best friends with this girl and they hang out alone, this is unacceptable. Like, they could see them at a public place. You can get invited along. Like you don't have
nothing to do with trust.
No, and it's like it's not even trust, but if a fly on the wall could look into that scenario and see a guy and a girl hanging out in a living room and they could think anything else than platonic, you're doing something wrong.
Yes.
I mean,
but here's the thing, like if you think about like it amazes me that people would say I want to be in a relationship but I want to still remain like with my single attributes. That right there is kind of crazy for me to understand. But I always tell people like when lottery winners used to hit the lottery, they would say like, well, this isn't going to change me, like even though now I have this money. And then you look at like 5 years later and it actually hasn't changed them. Like they lost all the money. Then they go on air and they say like, oh, it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But if you thought having more money was going to make you a better person, you would be like, this is going to change me big time. Like I'm going to be able to donate more. I'm going to be able to amplify all the good deeds that I've ever done. And I think of it that way too in a relationship. Like if you're going into a relationship thinking, this isn't going to change me, it's not going to change me, I'm still going to be able to hang out with my friends. Well, time's not abundant. It's got to like horse trade. If you're going to be with somebody else on Thursday night, then you're not going to be with your friends on Thursday night. But if you thought a relationship would enhance your life, then you'd be like, yeah, of course, I want this relationship to change me in a good, positive way, And when you see, like you were saying that, you see how somebody behaves, Well, I mean, when you spend a lot of time with somebody, like they're going to see all components versus the person in Publix, my cashier, like she only sees like Laura that buys groceries. Maybe she sees Laura that buys expensive groceries, and that might be a different person than the Laura of 6 months ago that bought cheap groceries. But she's only going to see a certain side of me. But like if you feel like, oh, every time we argue, this person treats me this way, and it happens, like it's a repetitive habit over and over, you really have to take some accountability for the fact that you never drew a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And you never set up that wall and said, like, no, enough is enough. Like my husband and I have had plenty of disagreements. And, sometimes I'm just like, okay, well, you do your thing and I'm just going to go do something else until you're done doing your thing. Like,
because I think a lot of people struggle like, okay, I don't want him to talk to me like that, but how do I do it? So I'll give a silly example. This was my neighbor. So I don't know, my road was getting paved, so we had to park elsewhere for like a week. And then I guess they just finished paving it, and then I was passing by and they recognized me from every morning, walking, to my car. So like, oh no, you could go in, you could go in. So they waved me into the road. So I was the first one driving on the road, and I pulled into my driveway. And then my neighbor who saw this, just starts screaming all these expletives at me, like, what the F? And I'm like, I just literally just said, I stop. I put up my
collaborate
hand
and listen.
and then we started dancing. No, but, but I just said, like, stop. I'm like, you are not going to speak to me like that, And then he kept yelling and yelling and yelling. And I go, you either calm down and lower your voice, otherwise I'm going to go inside.
Calm and respectful. I'm not listening.
And then it was just like, you can't change what they're doing, but you could take yourself away.
Right.
And then when they calm down, then you could have a conversation about it. And the next time I saw him, I had a very calm conversation when he was calm. But I said, if you want to talk to me, that is not the tone or the language that you use with me. Otherwise, I'm just going to ignore you forever.
And that's a boundary that you placed. And he quickly learned
that
okay,
never happened again.
She's not going to tolerate
Yeah.
this crazy, frantic behavior. And, he probably thought that you did it without asking. You drove on the new pavement without asking. So there's miscommunication. A lot of times when there's arguments.
Most of them are. Yeah.
Like 80%.
Yeah.
Probably total miscommunication. That's why, like, we're watching chick flicks and we're like yelling at the screen, like, just go tell her how you feel. And I know, because it's all miscommunication, and that's what gets our heart pumping. But I mean, it's if you have not set that boundary, like say in the past, you have let that neighbor treat you poorly, it's really never too late to implement a boundary. People will learn the new behavior fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Like they'll get like I said, they'll, Antoinette's broken. Like they'll notice the change. They'll be like, I always swear at her and yell at her, like she just thinks I'm a crotchety old man, and now she's setting a boundary. Like, and then they'll try it like 2 or 3 times again. But if you're not calm and respectful, then I'm not talking to you, and you walk away and you go in your house, if you do it right away, then I think you don't get the multiple times.
Yeah.
But if it's something that you need to change, you just have to be patient that it's going to take them a hot minute to, change their behavior because you've set a new boundary. But it happens. And in that scenario, if you had tolerated that behavior, you'd be like, my neighbor's a jerk. He treats me poorly. Like, I don't like how he treats me. But you have to take accountability that you let it happen.
Yeah, there's that saying, people treat you as bad as you let them.
Yes.
Which is true. And I remember I was talking to actually my hairdresser about, I don't know if it was like boundaries in general, but it was this type of topic. And I was just saying, like, I don't know if I'm a nice person. She goes, come on. She goes, being nice is totally overrated. And I looked at her. She goes, what's more important is being a good person. She goes, and you are a great person. She goes, don't sit there worrying about, like, if you didn't
nice
sugarcoat some. No, but it's better to be a good parent than a nice parent. You know what I mean? It's better to be a good girlfriend than a nice girlfriend. It's you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know. I think people think like nice is like just happy-go-lucky, but
Yeah,
yet
but
a pushover.
you don't want to be a doormat, because there are things like, even if you look at the Bible and Jesus, he wasn't nice all the time either, and he was, the only one who was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, he really, I'm glad that you brought the topic over here. He would talk about God's opinion, right, on matters, and he would try and talk to the Pharisees about God's opinion on certain things. And realistically, like, everybody's a child of God, and God wants to protect you, and he doesn't want people to treat you poorly either. So, like, he doesn't want his kids treated poorly. So, this, setting boundaries, like, it's not like Jesus they were gonna say, like, oh, hey, you shouldn't do that, and be like, oh, all right, like, I won't do it. No, like, God says I can, and
Yeah.
so I will. And he would explain it to them. So I'm glad you brought it, like, into I love it. I got my Jesus shirt on. I love the biblical nature. People compliment me and they say, oh, a nice shirt. And I'm like, well, a lot of people wear their business and this is my boss. So, but I think a lot of people, you should wear it. You should wear it because, like, it's one way to spread the message without actually saying any words, which I
Yeah.
think is fantastic.
was
But the boundaries, like, I think it's harder. I don't want to say this, like, it's harder for women, I really think, to
I
set
think so.
boundaries than men.
I think so.
Because when like, you talk about the nice thing, we don't want people to call us derogatory names.
No, but it's like, if a guy has strong boundaries, then he's, a
Strong.
leader or strong, or he doesn't take any BS, where a woman's a B something.
be 5-letter word.
Aj.
But it's true. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why there's these double standards, but it's true. Like, sometimes I don't feel great about setting boundaries, like with clients or things like that, but it needs to happen. And I'm like, to some extent, I'm not teaching them anything by not putting a boundary in place. I'm actually teaching them a bad behavior
Yeah.
for their business. If I don't model it for my own business, like, how do I expect my clients to use it in their business?
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
But I do think, like, men not get away with it more. I just think that they're easier. They can implement their boundaries and people just give them, like, more slack.
Yeah, they're
I
not going
was
to get
thinking about that
criticized
this
for it.
morning, that, like, there's a lot of double standards. Maybe, a couple weeks, let's do a
Double-
double standard, because, like,
Yeah, I like that.
somebody stood up and I was looking at their dad bod, beer belly, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, wow, that's, like, totally acceptable. But if I just, like, grew a huge pouch, people would start calling me a kangaroo or something. Like, not as acceptable. It's not fair.
Like, she really let herself go.
Oh, I know. But, like, you got these guys walking around with like a tight.
Yeah, we'll
Hard.
do that topic. But the other thing I just want to bring up too with relationships. So even if, let's say, you're single, but what I found too is, like, I had this one guy at the gym who was just so annoying, and he kept trying to, like, let's go to lunch or let's do dinner, and then he asked me on a cruise, and he's like, just as friends. Friends, male and female, don't just do that. Like, I've never been outside.
He probably would have only rented one room too.
Well, I don't even know. I didn't even care. But it's one of those too that you got to realize, I don't care if someone's just as a friend or just this, or if you don't have the same feelings. When it comes to male-female relationships, you have to be cognizant of what is, significant other arena and activities versus non-significant other. So if you're single and you're stressed out and some guy's like, oh, let me rub your shoulders or something like that, you may be giving him a bad green light that you don't think you are, or something like that. It's different if I go to a chiropractor and go, hey, I mean, that's a different
Touch my shoulders.
Please, they're killing me, But, you got to realize too that, and especially now, I think
there has to be boundaries in friend relationships.
Well,
male, female, and male, female, female, male, male. It has to be.
Well, what I found now versus years ago, I think guys just had a little bit more, I don't know, like they were a little bit more manly. Class too. But if the list goes on. No, but it's one of those.
Let's go through this. Yet another topic we can delve into.
Everybody. No.
Yet another topic we can delve into.
No, but in general, like, if a guy was interested in you in something other than a friend, they would make it very obvious, like, hey, I like you. Would you like to go out to dinner? Blah, 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 blah. Now they don't want to put it out there like some big loogie hanging. They're like trying to sit there and safeguard their little feelings and do all this stuff. So they're like, hey, and they try to masquerade it into something else that sounds friendship like. And then you're thinking, oh, okay, they want my business advice, like whatever. And it's going on and on and on. And then the next thing you know, they're trying to like stick your tongue down your throat. You're like, you know what I mean?
I've never had a client do that, but okay.
No, but it's like if you like somebody romantically, let them know. Because it's not doing anybody any favors because you have weak boundaries. They're like in this gray area. Just, it's one of those that it's okay if you're single, if you're married or dating somebody, you shouldn't be ashamed of letting people know your intentions with the other person.
I think the culture is like fear of failure and fear of rejection.
That's what I mean.
So it's gotten so
like
bad.
I've never had a guy ask me out and then me be like, oh my God, now I'm going to tell all my friends and they're going to be a laughing stock. You just go, oh, that was really sweet, but whatever, it's not a match for me or whatever. No. And it's end of story. And then instead, it's not like a year of them pining, trying to run into you or follow you to the grocery store. And then, been there, done that.
Like this is a totally longer conversation than we have time for. But I think whatever boundaries you're setting that you need to set, and I have talked with a therapist about this like all the time. Again, we need a therapist on here. But, about setting boundaries. The key is that they're for you. Everybody's boundaries are different. My boundaries will be different than Antoinette's. They'll be different than everybody else's. Like the key is it's for you to have a more peaceful life and existence. And whatever boundaries that you have, just stick to them. People will respect you eventually for like taking a stance and like accepting certain behaviors and not accepting other behaviors. I see people, I was having this conversation with somebody about somebody that we know that's in a relationship, and one of the persons in the relationship is a complete doormat. Like doesn't stand up for anything, has no boundaries, lets the other person walk all over them. And we're like I don't respect that behavior.
But to me, boundaries show personality because you find out what is important to another person too. Yes. Like this is something that I value, and I value it not only for me, but for other people. So to me, I'd rather be friends and date and interact with people with personalities than just lumps on a log.
And if you don't know what boundaries to set, pick up a Bible, read Proverbs. There's a lot of things that God talks about in there. I think Proverbs is like a handbook on how to live life, really.
I like Proverbs, yeah.
There's a lot of great information on there on how people should treat each other and how you should be treated and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable and what's from God and what's not from God and things like that. But, we're going to have to wrap up fairly soon. I know, because
so fast.
Boundaries is like, it's becoming a big thing. It's kind of like protein. I just saw a meme that said, like, I have never, as an adult, people are trying to push protein on me more than they tried to push drugs on me as a kid. Like, it's crazy. But boundaries has become like a new word, I think, because society has lost their boundaries. It's like a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Or some relationships, and some people are just...
The other key word is high value. Like high value. That's a high value person. That means they have boundaries. Hint.
Yeah, doormats.
And then the reverse is someone with no boundaries is a low value person because people...
They don't value themselves.
No, they don't value themselves. So how else are people going to value you and what you bring to any situation if you can't even value yourself?
And I'm going to tell you that it is not easy to set boundaries. It's not easy to keep boundaries. I was talking about the list earlier. You don't have to print it out and give it to a new person. I have a list of boundaries that I have to constantly remind myself when I want to change something. But, I'm not the same person I was when I was 20 or 30 or even 40. And now I'm in my 40s. And so boundaries can change over
Oh,
time.
yeah.
What wasn't acceptable can now be acceptable with the right person, like all kinds of other stuff. And I have to like I'm a list person. I love lists.
I had actually this a quick story. So I was talking with somebody new and we had a little bit of a tiff. Nothing
It
crazy.
wasn't me, was it?
No.
Paranoia runs supreme.
Does
No, I'm
this
just
sound
kidding.
familiar? But it was this guy and we had this little argument and then he said, he goes, now I just got to ask, are you one of those that when, you kind of butt heads, do you need time to process alone? Are you one of those people that likes to talk it through? And I was like, wow.
Clearly a man that's been to therapy.
But I was like, what a nice way. I'm like, you just won so many kudos for that because you weren't going to just assume I was like your last girlfriend or this or that, but you actually came at me and just said, what is my preference? And you were willing to honor it, whatever that is. And I thought that was phenomenal.
If guys, this is for all the guys out there. If you came into an argument or a disagreement or whatever with curiosity and trying to understand rather than defensiveness and trying to win,
huge bonus points. Yeah.
Mic drop. Like,
Yeah. Hello, you just figured out women. you know when you're like, how do I
Congratulations.
figure that out? That's it.
Congratulations. Here's your gold star.
Yeah. Okay, Laura, what are we talking about next week?
What are we talking about now?
Oh, I was like, you're going to bring it up because I already forgot.
It's midlife crisis.
Oh, that was it. That was
I
it.
know. I'm in my late 40s. Can I say how old you are?
No.
Okay. Well, she's ish the same.
I'm between birth and death. So
She's in the mid. She's in the middle between birth and death. Hopefully.
So I'm old enough to vote, but not young enough to retire.
So we were talking about like, how do you know if your behavior is just normal or if you're having a midlife crisis or like, how do you
recognize it in others?
Yeah. How do you see those behaviors? So we're going to talk about it next week. And we do not have the answers. I can already tell you because when we discussed the topic, we're like, well, I don't know. Are we in midlife crisis or are we just like fed up? Or I'm like, perimenopause. I'm like, I don't know.
I've seen some patterns in some definite people.
It's not always like, oh, this older guy went out and bought a convertible Corvette. And so like he's having a midlife crisis. Not that easy to recognize. So we're going to talk about it next time. It's going to be super fun.
Yeah, definitely. So until then, never stop laughing.
And never stop learning. We love you guys. See you later.
Things are truly better with us.